tell you something. Some of y'all out here thinking you alone, walking through fire, walking through hell, life hitting you from every direction. Your money's funny. Your relationship's on the rocks. Your dreams feel 1,000 miles away. You feel like nobody sees you, like nobody hears your cries. But I came here to tell you something different. I came here to wake you up. God sees you. God hears you, and he's got angels around you. See, here's the thing. Most people think angels are just some fairy tale in a book, something cute in a picture frame. Wings, white robes, heart. You didn't survive by luck. That's not just a motivational catchphrase. That's the truth that too many people forget when they're deep in the valley. You're not here today because the odds happen to be in your favor. You're not standing, breathing, thinking, and living because the universe just worked out for you. You're here because something bigger than you was watching over you. You're here because God has angels on assignment, and they have been working overtime in your life, even when you didn't know it. See, we get so caught up in our daily struggles, in our failures, in our disappointments, that we lose sight of the invisible battles happening on our behalf. We think we made it because we were smart enough. But let's be real, there were times you weren't strong at all, times you were barely holding on, times you were walking in darkness, confused, broken, hurting, and still somehow you made it. That's not you. That's divine protection. God didn't bring you this far for no reason. Every bullet you dodged, every accident you avoided, every wrong place at the wrong time that turned into the right time. Those were not coincidences. Those were interventions. Those were angels stepping in, shifting the atmosphere, redirecting your path. Because God had something bigger in mind for your life. Let's go deeper. There are things you don't even know God protected you from. You were on your way somewhere and your car broke down. You were mad, frustrated, but what if he was saving you from a wreck down the road? What if the job you didn't get was because he knew the people in that company would have destroyed your peace? What if the breakup that crushed you was a blessing because that person couldn't walk with you into your purpose? See, protection doesn't always feel good in the moment. We think God's protection should look like comfort, but real protection sometimes looks like delay, denial, and disruption. And the only reason you made it through all that is because angels were guarding you, fighting for you, covering you when you couldn't even cover yourself. You need to start seeing your life through spiritual eyes. You need to understand that you're not just anybody. You're a child of God. And because of that, you've got a divine security detail. Every day there are angels going ahead of you, clearing paths, closing doors, and opening others. They're whispering into the ears of people in power. They're blocking the darts of the enemy. They're speaking peace into your heart when the world is in chaos. That's why you have to stop calling yourself lucky. You are covered. You are shielded. You are preserved for a purpose. And here's the beautiful part. Those angels aren't sent just because you're perfect. They're not assigned to you because you've always done everything right. They're there because God loves you and he has a calling over your life that the enemy can't stop no matter how hard he tries. Some of you are walking through life like victims, like you're always on the verge of losing. But if you knew what was happening in the spiritual realm, if you could see the angels that have already fought battles for you, you will walk differently. You would speak differently. You would praise differently. You wouldn't fear what's ahead because you know that heaven is already gone before you. Don't wait until the next crisis to remember you're protected. Start walking like you know who's covering you. Start living like you've got divine backup. Because you do. You've already survived things that others didn't make it out of. You've already come through fires that should have burned you up, but you walked out without even smelling like smoke. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's God sending his angels to keep you, guide you, and deliver you. So when life tries to convince you that you're alone, remind yourself of the truth. I've been covered this whole time. I'm not lucky. I'm protected. And I'm still here On purpose, for a purpose. When most people think about angels, they imagine glowing beings with wings, halos, and white robes floating in the clouds. They see them as distant, heavenly figures that only show up in dramatic moments. But that's the problem. We're expecting angels to look a certain way, so when God sends them, we miss them. We ignore them. We overlook them because they don't fit the image we've built in our minds. But the truth is, angels don't always look like what you expect. God doesn't just send supernatural beings to protect you. Sometimes he sends people. Sometimes the angel you needed was a stranger who said the right thing at the right time. Sometimes it was a teacher who saw potential in you when nobody else did. Sometimes it was a friend who stayed on the phone with you when you were at your lowest. It could have been your mother who kept praying even when you didn't believe in prayer yourself. It could have been the coach who challenged you, the mentor who corrected you, the boss who gave you a chance when no one else would. We get so stuck waiting for something miraculous that we miss the miracles in everyday people. You were expecting wings, but God sent work boots. You were expecting a light from the sky, but God sent a word through a text message. You were expecting a heavenly voice, but God sent someone who simply showed up when you needed them most. Don't miss your angel because they don't look like your version of holy. And it goes deeper. Sometimes the angel isn't a person to you. Sometimes the angel is you to someone else. Sometimes God assigns you to protect. Someone speak life into someone. Carry someone through a storm. You may not realize it, but there are people walking around today because of a word you gave them, because of a prayer you whispered when no one was looking, because of a moment when you stopped what you were doing and showed compassion when they needed it most. You didn't just help them, you shielded them, you lifted them, you became the hands of God in their lives. We need to stop putting God in a box. He doesn't just work in churches or through preachers. He works in conversations. He works in coffee shops. He works through teachers, janitors, students, nurses, cashiers, Uber drivers, anybody. God will use whoever's available. And he doesn't need them to be perfect. He just needs them to be willing. That's why you can't afford to treat people like they're insignificant. That person you passed by in a rush may have been the one God sent to give you the confirmation you've been praying for. That coworker you ignore might be the one carrying a word that shifts your whole situation. And the one you least expect, the one you might overlook or judge, that's often the one God chooses to speak through. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan? The religious people passed by the man who was hurt. They had status, they had position, but they didn't have compassion. It was the Samaritan, the one who was considered an outsider, who stopped, helped, and protected. That's how God works. He uses the unexpected, the unconventional, the overlooked, because that's where his glory shows up best. So open your eyes, look around, pay attention. God is still sending angels, and they're not always coming from the clouds. They might be coming from across the street. They might be sitting next to you. They might be you. And when you start to see the divine in the ordinary, you'll start recognizing just how active God really is in your life. God is not distant. He's not silent. He's speaking. He's moving. He's protecting. And he's doing it through the people around you, through the moments you take for granted, through the encounters you think are random. Nothing is random in the kingdom. Everything is working together, and angels are showing up. You just have to be willing to see them for who they are. So the next time someone helps you, speaks into your life, or simply shows you kindness, don't dismiss it. That might just be your angel on assignment. And don't ever forget, someone is probably saying the same thing about you. Life has a way of throwing storms at you, unexpected, heavy, and sometimes violent storms, the kind that make you question everything, the kind that knock the wind out of you, that shake your confidence and make you wonder where God is in the middle of it all. And the truth is, when you're in it, when you're really going through it, it can feel like God is far away. But here's what you need to understand. God doesn't always remove the storm. Sometimes he sends protection in the storm. We've been conditioned to think that if God really loves us, he'll take the pain away. That if he's really listening, he'll stop the hardship before it happens. But that's not how protection always works. God's protection doesn't mean he shields you from every challenge. Sometimes it means he covers you through it. He walks with you in the fire. He anchors you in the flood. He gives you peace in the middle of chaos. And often he sends angels to stand guard in a storm, not to make it disappear, but to make sure it doesn't destroy you. You got to remember, storms are a part of life. There's no escape from them. You're either walking into one, sitting in one, or coming out of one. But if you belong to God, you are never walking through them alone. There is spiritual protection surrounding you that you may not even see. Angels don't always show up with flashes of light. Sometimes they show up as peace you can't explain. Sometimes they show up as unexpected strength to get up one more time. Sometimes they show up as clarity when your mind should be spinning out of control. Think about the story of Jesus and the disciples on the boat in the middle of the storm. The winds were raging, the waves were crashing, and the disciples were panicking. They thought they were going to die. But Jesus was asleep right there in the boat. Why? Because he knew they were protected. He knew the storm wasn't bigger than the purpose. He knew the presence of danger didn't mean the absence of God. And that's a lesson for you. Just because things are shaking around you doesn't mean you're not covered. Just because the storm looks overwhelming doesn't mean it has the power to take you out. Sometimes the storm is the very place where God reveals his presence the most. And often is where his angels get activated. See, angels are not just around when you're safe. They're most active when you're not. Their job isn't to keep you in comfort. It's to keep you in alignment with the purpose God has for your life. There's some things that can only grow in the storm. Some strength you don't discover until everything else is stripped away. And part of God's protection is letting you go through it so that when you come out, you know who sustained you. You know who brought you through. You know it wasn't your own power that kept you. It was his presence, his grace, his angels surrounding you on every side. You're praying for the storm to end, but sometimes God is using the storm to build something in you. And he's protecting you while he does it. The goal is not always escape, it's endurance. And God's protection often shows up as divine endurance. The fact that you didn't quit, the fact that you didn't lose your mind, the fact that you're still standing, even with tears in your eyes, that's protection. That's evidence of angels working on your behalf. So the next time life hits you hard, the next time the storm comes, and it will, don't ask why me. Ask, where is he in this? Look for the protection in the storm because it's there. Look for the moments where you should have fallen but didn't, where you should have been destroyed but weren't, where your faith should have failed but somehow it held. That's where the angels were. That's where God was holding you together when everything else was falling apart. God doesn't promise a storm-free life, but he does promise that he will never leave you nor forsake you. And sometimes his love shows up not in the calm, but in the chaos. Not in the absence of trouble, but in the presence of protection. You're still here, not because the storm wasn't real, but because God sent what you needed to survive it. That's protection in the storm. That's how he moves. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about God's protection is that it's all about comfort. That when you're protected by God, life should be easy, smooth, and pain-free. But that's not how divine protection works. God isn't just interested in keeping you comfortable. He's interested in calling you into your purpose. And sometimes the reason the pressure is so heavy, the reason the fight feels so intense is because you have a calling so powerful that heaven had to assign extra protection just to keep you on track. Angels aren't assigned to your comfort. They're assigned to your calling. The enemy doesn't attack people who aren't a threat. He doesn't waste resources on someone who's not carrying something valuable. So if you've been under pressure, if life has been trying to wear you down, break you down, or make you walk away from what you were born to do, that's not a sign that you're weak. That's a sign that you're chosen. That's a sign that your purpose is so real, so heavy, so impactful that you've been targeted. But here's the good news. Before the enemy even planned to attack, God already assigned angels to protect your destiny. When you start to realize that the opposition isn't random, you start walking different. The depression you went through wasn't just about sadness. It was a spiritual assault meant to break your spirit before you stepped into purpose. That sickness you survived wasn't just a physical issue. It was an attempt to slow you down before you reach your season of impact. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the loss, it wasn't just life being unfair. It was an attempt to derail your focus, to rob you of your identity, to distract you from the assignment God placed on your life. But you're still here. You're still standing. You're still breathing. That's the evidence. That's the proof that God's protection is real. Because if the enemy had his way, you'd be done. But angels were sent to make sure you didn't give up. Angels were sent to remind you of who you are when you forgot. Angels were sent to shield your purpose even when your faith was low and your hope was running out. You might not have seen them, but you felt the moments. When something told you to keep going, when someone called just when you needed it, when you made a decision that pulled you back from the edge. That wasn't coincidence. That was divine strategy. That was God guarding what he put inside of you. Understand this, your purpose is a problem for the kingdom of darkness. Every time you step closer to it, hell gets nervous. That's why the attacks come heavier when you're on the verge of breakthrough. That's why things fall apart right before elevation. Because there's something in you that can shift the atmosphere. Something in you that can change lives. Something in you that God intends to use for his glory. And that's what the enemy wants to stop. Not your comfort, your calling. But thank God that he doesn't just assign purpose, he assigns protection. The same way a president gets a security team, the same way a valuable item gets armored transportation, your calling comes with coverage. And those angels are on post every day, making sure what God placed in you survives every attack, every delay, every detour. You've been asking God, why is life so hard? But the real question is, what is it about me that's so important the enemy keeps trying to stop me? Shift your mindset. Instead of seeing yourself as under attack, see yourself as under assignment. And when you're on assignment, protection isn't optional. It's guaranteed. That doesn't mean you won't feel pain. That doesn't mean you won't cry. That doesn't mean you won't feel like quitting. It just means that even in the pain, God is preserving what matters most, your purpose. So walk like you're chosen, move like you're covered, speak like you know you've got angels clearing the path before you. You are not ordinary. You are not here by accident. You are a threat to darkness, and because of that, you are divinely protected. Let that sink in. Let it shape how you live. Because when you understand that angels are assigned to your purpose, you stop fearing the attack and start walking in victory. There are moments in life when you look back and realize you shouldn't have made it. You shouldn't have survived. The odds were against you. The pain was too deep, the betrayal too sharp, the loss too heavy. And yet somehow you're still here. That's not something to gloss over. That's not something to chalk up to being strong or resilient. That is evidence, undeniable evidence that angels were at work in your life. Your survival is proof of divine protection. You didn't just make it, you were carried. Too many people underestimate what they've overcome. They shrug off what they've survived. They forget the nights they cried themselves to sleep, the days they walked around with a smile while they were breaking inside. You've been through battles that nobody knows about. You've suffered in silence. You fought demons in your mind, and despite it all, you got up. Maybe slow, maybe with a limp, but you got up. That doesn't happen by accident. The enemy wanted to take you out. That's real. Not just in a metaphorical sense, but in a spiritual one. There were attacks on your mind, your heart, your peace, your body, your family. You were targeted not because you were weak, but because you're valuable, because there's something in you that threatens darkness. The enemy saw it and tried to kill it before it could mature. But God stepped in. He sent protection, not always in ways you recognized, not always in ways you prayed for, but in ways that worked. That's why you're still breathing. Maybe you didn't see the angels, but they were there. When that car swerved but didn't hit you, when you were one bad decision away from losing everything and somehow you changed your mind, when you were ready to give up and that phone call came, when the money came through just in time, when you almost took your life but something made you pause. That wasn't coincidence, that wasn't luck. That was the supernatural stepping into the natural. That was heaven intervening on your behalf. Sometimes protection doesn't look like a miracle, it looks like a delay. A closed door. A missed opportunity. And in the moment it hurts. You feel rejected, you feel overlooked. But later you see it, that delay was divine. That rejection was redirection. That no was a blessing in disguise. And now you look back and say, thank God that didn't work out. You didn't know it then, but an angel was holding that door shut, not to harm you, but to preserve you. We often pray for God to bless us, but don't realize that the greatest blessing is survival. You can't walk in your purpose if you're not alive. And too many people take survival for granted. But when you really understand what you've been through, what you've walked through, crawled through, cried through, you realize survival is sacred. Every breath is proof of grace. Every sunrise is a sign that you've been protected, even when you didn't deserve it. Your survival is your testimony. It's your sermon. It's the message that someone else needs to hear. Because there's somebody who's going through what you came out of. Somebody who's drowning. In the storm, you already survived. And your story, your scars, your experience is not just for you, it's for them. It's a reminder that God still protects, that angels are still on assignment, that survival is possible, that victory is real. You didn't just survive to say you made it. You survived to declare that God is faithful. You survived to be a living, breathing example of what divine protection looks like. You survived so that someone else would have the courage to keep going. So don't diminish your story. Don't downplay your journey. Own it, speak it, share it. Because every time you do, you're not just telling your truth, you're revealing God's truth. That he covers, that he keeps, that he sends angels to shield what the enemy meant to destroy. And if you're still in the middle of the fight, if the storm hasn't passed yet, hold on. Your survival isn't just in your past, it's in your future. If he kept you before, he'll keep you again. If he protected you then, he'll protect you now. The same God who brought you through that will bring you through this. You're not here by mistake. You're here because divine hands held you together when everything else was falling apart. That's not a guess. That's not a wish. That's the truth. And your survival is the proof. There's a powerful truth that most people miss when they think about how God works. Protection isn't always about stopping something from happening. Sometimes protection is about revealing something that was hidden. Sometimes God sends angels not just to shield you from the danger, but to show you what's really going on around you. Because you can't fight what you can't see, and you can't heal what you won't confront. That's why sometimes God sends angels to reveal what's hidden, not to destroy you, but to protect you by opening your eyes. It's uncomfortable when it happens. Nobody wants to find out that the people they trusted didn't have their best interests at heart. Nobody wants to discover that the environment they were thriving in was actually toxic. But God loves you too much to let you walk blind into destruction. He loves you too much to let you stay tied to something that's slowly killing your purpose. So he sends a disruption. He pulls back the curtain. And yes, it hurts, but it saves you. Think about the times in your life when you felt blindsided, when someone's true character was exposed, when a secret came to light, when something you were counting on fell apart. At first you were devastated. It felt like everything was breaking. But over time you realized that what broke was what needed to break. The friendship that ended, the job that let you go, the relationship that turned sour. Those things were never meant to carry you into your destiny. God didn't reveal the truth to destroy you. He revealed it so you could see, so you could make new decisions with new clarity. Angels aren't just protectors, they're messengers. And sometimes the message is a wake-up call. Sometimes the angel comes in the form of a conversation or a painful truth or a moment of revelation that shakes you. You were praying for peace and God gave you perspective. You were praying for blessings and God gave you boundaries. You were praying for answers and God gave you truth. Because once you can see clearly, you can choose differently. And that's protection at the highest level. Not just saving you from what's coming, but positioning you for what's next. The enemy thrives in darkness. He thrives in confusion, in secrets and lies. But when the light comes in, when the truth is revealed, his power is broken. And that's why God sometimes has to expose a thing you're too afraid to look at. That addiction you've been hiding, that trauma you've been ignoring, that relationship you've been forcing. He reveals it not to shame you, but to free you. Because what's hidden can't heal. And what's unspoken can't be broken. Sometimes we think the storm is the enemy, but it's actually the angel. The storm exposes the weak foundation. It reveals the cracks in the structure. It shows you who's really with you and who was only with you when it was easy. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. And clarity is a gift. Clarity is protection. You can't walk in purpose if you're chained to delusion. God wants you free, and freedom comes from knowing the truth, even when it hurts. There are people right now who are praying for protection, and God is answering by revealing. He's revealing motives. He's revealing hidden battles. He's revealing patterns you've ignored. And the question is, will you have the courage to see it for what it is? Because once you see the truth, you're responsible for it. Once God shows you, you can't pretend not to know. That's why Revelation feels so heavy, because it requires action. It requires surrender. It requires trust. But here's the good news. Whatever God reveals, he also heals. He doesn't show you just to leave you. He doesn't expose the wound just to let it fester. He shows you so he can restore you. And he sends his angels to guard that process, to keep your mind while he's rebuilding your heart, to surround your purpose while he's cutting away what doesn't belong. So if things are being exposed in your life, don't panic, don't run, don't numb yourself to the truth. Ask God for eyes to see, ask for wisdom, ask for strength, because what feels like breaking is actually building. What feels like punishment is actually protection. And what feels like loss is really freedom. The truth is your shield. And when God sends angels to reveal what's hidden, it's because he's preparing you for what's greater. You're not being destroyed, you're being delivered.